Hello Internet, I'm Zahn, and welcome back to another series of drawing challenge videos. Now, it's been a little bit of time since I did the last couple, the Fusion Sprite challenge that I did using a randomizer online to give me two different animals, and then I tried to create a Pixel Sprite based on a combination of their attributes. What I'd like to do to sort of switch things up, since I don't want these challenges to just be a single theme or idea, what I thought I'd do for this one was go to another randomizer, and I found one that creates quote-unquote mythological monsters from, I guess, a randomized pool of different attributes and themes, and it spits out like a couple sentence narrative that describes the creature, and then it doesn't give you any other details other than that description. What I thought would be interesting would be to go to the randomizer, just have it spit something out, and then try and draw a sprite based on the description and what it tells me to do. And I've kind of changed my recording setup here since the last time I recorded something here for the channel. I moved my mic to the other side of my desk. In the past, it was getting a bit of feedback because the mic stand was really close to my PC tower. I think it was getting a little bit of feedback from the fans. Where it's at now, it's on the other side, so hopefully that interference should be minimal. I'll know once I start editing this. What I've done here, I have my recording window set up. As you can see, we're still working in Photoshop. The site that I went to, I'll pull it over the screen here, is called the Seventh Sanctum. And it's basically a series of randomizers and generators here. And if you look up here, it gives us the option to create one or up to 10 different randomized creatures. I may experiment with that later, especially if these yield interesting enough results and I try and fuse the results together. But for now, we'll have it spit out one, and this is just an example. The creature narrative shows up right here. It's the one that I tested here. It says, "This strange monster mutated from mankind sometime in the past. It reminds one of an octopus, but seems to be composed of blobs of tissue." It looks like the parameters for the randomizer here are comprised of a base creature type, and then some sort of definitive animal or noticeable life form, and then some other descriptor that goes with it. So what we'll do here, I will just have it spit out one random one and we'll see what it comes up with here. And I'll do my best to maintain the windows instead of closing them out. That way, if I need to put the text on screen later, I can do that. So we'll have it spit out a new creature. Let's see what it says. This monster comes from another dimension. It reminds one of a squirrel and has wings like an owl. It has blue skin. It is wreathed in flames. Okay. Reminds one of a squirrel, huh? I'm gonna move that over here to this other window. And now let's see. Now we get to think up what makes the most sense for our sprite. I'm probably going to have to jump to my other window here, especially if I need to Google image search some of the components of this. We're going to start just like we did before with the base primary. This thing is some sort of extra dimensional creature. It'll probably be a larger sprite, given the dimensions here. Let's see, squirrels have sort of an upright body. What I'll start doing here, just to sort of rough out some ideas, is create just a basic outer shape, and this will probably be a placeholder while I figure out what exactly I want to do. This is going to borrow a little bit from the Was it the lemur? No, that was the camel one. The lamster. Squirrels and hamsters are somewhat similar body type. This would have been a very similar pose that we chose for the lamster. And we had its arms out here and its head up here. For this creature, and I don't know what we're gonna call this thing. We'll see what we end up with at the end. And then squirrels have a bushy tail, so it'd be like something like this. But it has wings like an owl. So we definitely want something that's probably going to be a flying creature of sorts. So rather than do that simple sitting pose, what if we did a more mid-flight pose? Kind of like this. If we have the legs down here, I'll have to actually Google and look up what the limbs of a squirrel look like, but if this is the face here, squirrels have big ears? I can't remember. We'll just do it like that. It'll be sort of cat-like for now. But then owl wings. I also have to look up what the owl wings look like. You could do something like this. So that it's in mid-flight. And then the tail can be down here. That's a possibility. And then if we just erase some of the boundary lines in between, we would get something that looks kind of like this. Again, this is just a rough primary to kind of come up with some ideas for the pose of this thing. I'm starting to think that my canvas might not be big enough. This is the 120 by 120 base that I use. I do have a different one that I've used for other designs for a different series I'm working on that's double this size. Well, let's see if we can work within these constraints. And real quick, to give us a point of reference, I'm going to Google image search squirrel and try and get an idea for what the head's supposed to look like along with the rest of the body. Okay. Taking a look at our results here, the squirrel has sort of a small face, large eyes, and little pointy ears. They're sort of round triangular shaped ears. And then it's got short arms and kind of graspy looking paws. The feet are very similar to like the hamsters in that they're kind of short legs, but they have all these long kind of like grasping toes. And squirrels have whiskers. I guess I forgot that they had whiskers. I haven't exactly looked at a squirrel up close in a while. That's a good point of reference. Now let's look up an owl. I don't think the owl wings are going to need to be too unique. They're just sort of feathered bird wings. Let's see. That's not a bad picture. Snowy owl. And this one, they have pretty broad wings, and the feathers flare out towards the end. So I'll have to keep that in mind. It's a good reaction image. Alright, we'll keep the snowy. Oh, actually, that's a better picture. Okay. I'm going to keep my animal image results on the side here. I do like where we've kind of started with the primary here, so I don't think I'm going to scrap this one just yet. But I do want to slowly start zeroing in on the head itself for our creature here. Squirrels have almost a triangular shaped head. And the eyes, they have kind of round eyes that stick out a little bit from that picture. And then a little triangular nose. These drawing challenge things are a good exercise for me to learn animal anatomy. As a person who does a lot of creature and monster designs, trying to create something from a more realistic design is an interesting challenge. What I think we could do, because again these are quote-unquote mythological creatures, once we have the base primary sort of narrowed down and the details are drawn in, then I'll probably start experimenting with the monster-like aspects, since especially this one being an extra-dimensional creature, it gives us a lot of room to experiment with the otherworldly designs, and that's when my background will be relevant, I suppose. But until then, we need to continue to tweak the details on the primary here. I think this is getting a little bit closer face-wise. The whiskers might be a problem, but I'll leave those in there for now, and just like I did on the Lamster, I may have to go back and tinker around with their placement so it doesn't mess with the line art too much. But for now, leave those there. The face. I'm trying to get a bit more symmetry with the eyes. The squirrel does have relatively round eyes. And the ears, kind of like that. Width-wise, we're right up about at the limit of our canvas here. I think I like the placement of the wings. I may take in the sides a little bit so that I could capture the feathers a little bit better here. Looking back to the pictures of owls, the path of the wing, again, this is a good lesson in animal anatomy. The actual bone of the wing goes up like this, and then it flares out this way and goes into the actual feathers. So what I'm gonna have to figure out for this creature is if I want it to be feathered or if I want it to be furry, or a combination of both. Because the feathers, the wings do have to have feathers, but the rest of the body doesn't necessarily have to. If I wanted to, I could kind of cut it off here and then only have feathers out in this section and then texture it accordingly. And I don't know if that makes more or less sense than just trying to add feather texture to the whole body. Because if I did that, I could add some texture to the torso and then the tail. The legs I'm going to have to be a little bit careful with because I don't have a whole lot of room to work there. For the feet, as we saw in the sample image, squirrels have these long kind of finger claw things. So what I want to add to our creature here would be something similar. They're not exactly bird talons, but they should be long digits with claws on the end, taking into account the squirrel attributes. What I'd like to do for this particular project, if the description in the narrative thing that we pulled up in the randomizer emphasizes a creature as the base, then that's what the majority of the features I incorporate are going to be. So for this one, because it said it's reminiscent of a squirrel, it's going to primarily be squirrel attributes, and then I will sort of factor in the additional descriptors, in this case the wings of an owl, accordingly. But I think that'll work for the base primary. What I'll do now, before we move any further, I'll go in and start cleaning up the line work around the border of everything, and then we'll work on filling in the details. And this part should be relatively simple. I'm just going to zoom in and then just start cleaning everything up. Just realized I'm going to need to thicken up the whiskers a little bit. And I'll clip them a little short. And now I could start cleaning up the outline around the face. While I'm working on this part, which is again pretty repetitive and not terribly interesting, I guess I could sort of use this opportunity to treat this video kind of like a lesser podcast, since creatively there's nothing really anything significant to talk about here. So I'll just sort of talk about some things that I've been keeping my eyes on until I'm done with the outline process, and then we'll move on. As of the time I'm recording this, the beginning of June of 2019, there's been a pretty decent amount of news in gaming, at least, that I've been keeping my eyes on. If you're watching this video on my channel, you probably noticed that the two main things I focus on here are art and video games. video game wise, there's kind of a lot on the horizon. As of today, E3 is maybe a week away from what I read. And that event is always a pretty big time for major developers and video game companies to announce or promote a lot of their upcoming titles and things that they want people to get excited for. And as I've mentioned multiple times on this channel and in videos, my favorite video game series is Monster Hunter. The folks at Capcom have been very slowly teasing details about the upcoming expansion to their last major release, Monster Hunter World. And they've been sort of slowly feeding information in the form of tweets and videos. And everything is, I suppose, leading up to their major press show at E3 of this year. And coincidentally, as of the date of writing this, or recording this, Capcom dropped a story teaser for Monster Hunter World Iceborne, the upcoming expansion, and they released some interesting information about the game, sort of ahead of the upcoming E3 event stuff they're planning on doing. And I have to say, the expansion is looking pretty awesome. There's tons of YouTubers out there covering the specifics in the releases and what Capcom said so far, but needless to say, based on what they've teased in the initial trailers and videos, Iceborne's looking to be a pretty major expansion to the Monster Hunter World base game that we got, was it last year? It's been a year already? The announcement of upcoming monsters and all sorts of things with the gameplay and environments look really exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on that game. I won't be at E3, but I will be at PAX West this year. And historically, Capcom has always been there to promote what they're working on Monster Hunter-wise at PAX. So hopefully I'll get a chance to take a look at Iceborne and at least see what's upcoming. That would be pretty great. Okay, I think we're just about done with the cleanup of the primary, the outlines here. I'll go up and save everything so far. For the base shape, I think this is a pretty good start. What I want to start working on now that we have the outline and everything roughed in is start figuring out some of the more specific details. We know this thing is a basic squirrel type creature with owl wings. And I was thinking to myself how I wanted to do the feathers. Doing a rough feathered texture-like look would be interesting. Let's see. What I'll do is I'll just start drawing in some basic feather shapes here. Looking at my reference here, the feathers get more definition towards the outsides. This area right here doesn't necessarily have as much definition, at least not on the snowy owl one we saw there. So what I think I'll do is I'll bring in the tips of the feathers to look a bit more defined going into the wing. think that'll make things a bit more clear. And I just had an idea for something to sort of build on the idea of this creature. So let me clean up the outlines just a bit here. I think the head's a bit off center too. I wonder if it's the eye that's off center. Let me try and move that over to the side a little bit. That's fine for now. I think I want to add a bit of fur texture to the tail. I'm gonna get back to the wings in a sec. Before I forget, I want to see if I can make this look a little bit more bushy. The squirrel in the reference picture that I pulled up definitely has sort of fine furred, bushy tail. Let's see what we can do with that here. Looks like doing that sort of lose the shape a bit. Let's see. We don't want to just draw Sonic the Hedgehog again. Yeah, not too happy with the way that looks. Let's try and restore the original outline and approach that from a slightly different angle. We have a through line that goes here. Let's see, what if we did it this way? And then instead of having it be rounded at the end. The problem with working at a low resolution like this is the amount of flexibility for adding in a lot of detail is a little limited, which is part of the challenge of drawing things this way. Let's see. That's a little bit better. If I just do some cleanup on the line work here. Change the tip of the tail is going to be pointed now as a result, which I think works a little bit better than just the rounded end where it looked like sort of just this blobby appendage. Let's see. If we add all this information or these details in here, maybe drag that out a bit more. See how that looks. What I'll do is I'll zoom out and try and get an idea for what that looks like. And I feel like it still looks a little bit weird with the edge there. I think what I'll do to sort of compromise, I'm not happy with that edge still. It looks really unusual. Keep the edge flat, but we'll keep the tip sort of tapered. And I think that'll look a little bit better. Maybe I can go back and add some detail work on the tail itself to add some texture. I think that will do for now. Now on to some of the more specific details. Looking at the Google image again, squirrels have an underbelly that's a different color, their fur, than the rest of the body. What we'll do is we'll add sort of an underbelly texture here, and then when I go in to do the coloring, this part will be a slightly different color. Now going back to the description, if I pull it up here, this monster comes from another dimension. It reminds one of a squirrel and swings like an owl. Has blue skin, it is wreathed in flames. Flame part we will do last. I think I know how I'm going to handle that. For the other dimension part, I was thinking to myself as we were sort of fleshing out the wing area over here, for something that looks like it comes from another dimension, it needs to have some sort of otherworldly or at least unsettling type of feature. So I thought, since we were trying to figure out how to do the wings, what if I put some eyes on the wings? Let's do 4. Doing this will serve 2 purposes. 1, it'll add to the more monstery aspects of the creature. And 2, it'll save me the trouble of having to deal with fur texture or feather texture on the wings themselves. Which I think makes a bit of sense, because we've already got the wing tips feathered. And by adding eyes, it'll make this thing all the more horrific to look at. And let's add another eye in the middle. We'll add pupils. And up here, in each of the individual eyes, this thing will be looking directly at the camera / viewer with all 7 of its eyes. Which means I gotta position this one a little bit further over here. Trying to fix the whiskers here. I think this one isn't going far enough onto the face. Looks like it's disconnected and floating there. But if we take our multi-eyed winged horror, I think we can go ahead and move on to the coloring. I'll do is I will save this layer here. These lines. Create the under layer for coloring. And now we can go in here and start messing around with color paletting. For the wings, this is going to be challenging. What I'd like to do is create sort of a gray underbelly. Again, keeping the squirrel color scheme in mind, this thing has to be mostly blue. But if we create a bounding layer here, it's kind of hard to see with the monitor resolution. If I section off everything, let's see if it'll work here. Need to make sure my Photoshop settings are correct here. Yeah. Okay, that's what we want. And I'm gonna do like a gray undercoat here. I just don't know if it's actually picking up the boundaries, so I'm gonna have to do this by hand. Or it could be that it's too light that I can't even tell what I'm doing. That is also possible. Let's do this. Get a boundary here, here. There we go. We'll have a sort of lighter gray undercoat. And what I was thinking originally was to have the wings be a matching color and the rest of the body be the actual blue. But I guess we could see what that'll look like. Create a boundary here and then drop that in. And for the blue, let's go with a kind of mid-tone, not too light, not too dark blue. Like so. The wings. And maybe we can add some blue to the wing tips. That way we still retain some of the original color scheme here. The idea behind this, and this might not communicate well with this position, but the idea would be the undersides of the wings here are gray, like the body, but the opposite side of the wings, if you were to flip them over, would be blue. So they're two-toned. And then I think what we will do for now is we'll give it dark gray claws. And for the eyes, we'll go one shade darker and see what that looks like. That's a bit too hard to tell the difference. You could go red if we're really going for the otherworldly monster type look, and then shade the eyes accordingly. Or maybe purple. Maybe purple would work better with the blue. Yeah, I think I like that better. The red's a little bit too glaring. Okay. I think if we add a little bit more blue highlights to the wings, I think that'll just about do it. And from here we can go ahead and do the shading, creating a layer above and using the clipping mask tool that will allow us to draw and color directly on the layer above. And if we go ahead and drop to a shade darker on the shadows, then it allows us to go in here and add the shading accordingly. I'm going to put some shadows around the face, on the neck going up the back here, a little bit under the wings to show that the wings are casting a shadow over the body. We'll get some shadows underneath for legs and on the sides for the foreground leg. Going over the tail, I missed a spot. The tail will do something similar, add fur texture, and the shadowing going up, just sort of following the path, assuming the light is coming from this direction. And we'll go up here and add color to the wings, wing tips. And we'll go ahead and add a couple more bits here. I'll do the claws real quick. I'm going to be utilizing at least 3 shades of the gray color for this. And then now we can move on to the underside and the wings. Oh, it's definitely too dark. Go down here like this. The shading, I think I've mentioned it on a couple other videos. The shading aspect is probably my favorite part of this whole thing. It's a good opportunity to just experiment with the color tones and the different angles sort of give the image depth. The color assignment part before this I do like, but I think the part that I find the most interesting is the shading at the end. What we're doing now is adding some shading to the eyes. We'll go up to the wing tips, add some shading underneath here and then along the top. Same thing on the other side. The trailing edge of the wing will catch some of the shadow here, and each wing tip feather here underneath will be shadowed from the one above it. Get a little bit down here. Now we do the eyes. We're just about done. And we'll go ahead and add some highlights to the eyes as well. Okay, I think that'll do it for... We'll do a final check on the shading. Make sure I didn't miss any spots. I think we can add a bit more to the claws here to match up with the light above. And I think that'll do it. I'll zoom out and take a look at the final results. This is a pretty big sprite. Alright. Let's fix this part up here. Now for the next part. The Wreathed in Flames. I mentioned before that I had an idea on how I wanted to do this. The easiest way I could think of to address the Wreathed in Flames aspect would be to do this on a layer above. I've done this on a couple other designs to add effects like glowing parts or drool. For this one, because the sprite is so big, I definitely want to do that on a layer above. So what I've done is created a layer above the line layer, so now anything we draw is directly above our creature here. And I think I'm gonna start by just drawing in some flame shapes. Can sort of make it look like they're wrapping underneath. Wreathed in Flames means it's pretty much covered in fire. And as long as I'm careful with how I show the patterning here, it'll look like the flames are sort of encircling its body. Let's see, that one I think is a bit too far. I don't want it to cover most of its features. So in addition to making it look like it's sort of wrapping around, I'm trying to avoid obscuring things like the eyes and the other details. Look like some fire's coming up from the back. Now, that's a good start for the fire. What I want to do is add some additional colors. We'll do orange and then potentially yellow. But first, because I need to know how fire works, let me look up some pictures of flames and look at the distribution of color. I want to say it goes lighter outside, darker inside. Let's see. Google image search, flames. A lot of stock photos. Okay, I guess I was wrong. The darker parts on the are on the outside, and the lighter parts are on the inside. So let's see how we're going to do that here. Go orange next. And we're going to add basically highlights mixed in with the fire. Doesn't need to be exact, I think, as long as it sort of mixes in with the red. That'll give it some depth. Yeah, that's a pretty good effect. Now I'll go in with the yellow and just add some little touches of yellow here or there. Again, it doesn't need to be exact. Go down here. Now we'll zoom out and take a look. Yeah, I think that'll do it. What we have here is a rough approximation of a squirrel-like creature with wings of an owl. I'm just fixing up some of the line work here. We added in some additional eyes to represent the extra dimensional aspect, and it is wreathed in flames. So, overall, interesting experiment. I think what I'll do is I will call this one here, and then move on to the next one. I still don't know what I'm going to call this thing. It's probably not going to have a hybrid name like the fusion sprites. I'll have to come up with something creative. And we'll go ahead and move on.